Hello and welcome to Coffee and Come Back. So today I'm joined by former soldier and founder of the Project Belief Foundation, Mark Harding. Now, Mark was shot in the neck while serving in Afghanistan in 2010, and this obviously caused devastating injuries and a long-lasting impact. But Mark's really passionate about this being a positive impact and actually creating a positive impact with everything that he does. I really wouldn't do Mark any justice if I tried to introduce him and all of the challenges that he's overcome and the achievements and everything that he's got planned for the future. So I'd just like to welcome Mark and ask if I can hand over to you to introduce yourselves to our listeners and just give us an insight into you and who you are. So welcome, Mark, and hello.
Hi Sam, thanks for having us. My name's Mark Harding and I've served 16 years in the army. That was with the Duke of Lancaster Regiment. So I've served pretty much all over the world. Operationally, I've been to Bosnia twice, Kosovo, Northern Ireland a few times, and Cyprus, Iraq, and then finally Afghanistan, where I sustained my injury in 2010.
Okay, and were there, leading up to the incident and the event in Afghanistan, which we don't necessarily need to go into in detail, but I take it there were a number of other challenges that you would have faced during that long career and the type of role that you were performing in the army.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously with a lot of the courses that I was training for Northern Ireland and Iraq, we were doing the close observation platoon, the COP platoon for that. So that was a quite sort of hard course to get round, both physically and mentally, really. And then it's just, and then going away and focusing on the tour in hands, I mean, like you say, I mean, every tour is always different, and it's just a case about how you adapt to the different theatre and the locals in their environment, really. So yeah.
Yeah, and would you mind sharing what made you join the army? Was it something you always wanted to do, to be a soldier, or?
Believe it or not, I used to work in a supermarket in Tesco's when I was about as soon as I left school, and then I was noticing people were shoplifting from the store, and I was catching between 2 and 3 shoplifters a week. And then a job came up for the store detective, and I was too young. And then I went back and I thought, right, is this just me? You're going to be stacking the shelves for the rest of my life? And I suppose in a way, the not getting that job just gave me the kick up the rear, really, to get myself motivated. And I thought, well, when I went home, I thought, well, I want to do something worthwhile. And, the army sort of stuck out, really. And then I joined at 19 and never looked back.
So when you sustained your injuries, was that what caused you to then leave the military? So your career was actually cut short because of what happened in Afghanistan? Yeah.
With the extent of injuries, I was in a 4-man team, and we're going to secure an improvised explosive device, like a bomb. So the team commander who was in the team, he got shot through his thigh, and I can remember him hopping around at that point. And then all I heard was a metal bang, and I was about a metre away from the wall when this happened, with all my patrol kit on. Came to, I had my left leg was on my right thigh, and my calves were parallel with each other. And straight away I thought the bomb had gone off, the IED. So I checked my legs were still there and attached, and then that's when I looked up and seen Chris had been shot through his thigh. So the 7.62 round had gone through his thigh and ruptured his femoral artery, so he was bleeding out. I couldn't really understand why I couldn't move at this point. They still didn't know I was shot. And that's when Bill, who's the Fijian guy who was with me, he said, Mark, I think you've been shot. And that's when I looked down. The whole left-hand side of my body armour was just dark red. And he said, I think you've been shot. And then that's when we had the QRF, the Quick Reaction Force, called out to provide a ring of steel around the 4-man team. Because like Bill had been shot in his arm, he didn't realise. So we had one guy out the team who was running around giving first aid, really. So yeah.
And did all three of you survive?
Yes, yeah. Chris is out now. He's got some scar in his leg, and Bill's still in. He's just got some scar in his arm. You know, and you know, I had to get discharged due to the extent of my injuries, same as Chris. So, but it's sort of like gives you a chance of a fresh chapter to move on and still sort of like support the army, but from the other side of the fence, really.
Yeah, and we're going to spend some time, aren't we, really focusing on some of the work that you do with the charities and supporting veterans. And in fact, we had a conversation before we came on, and you've been supporting a friend in the early hours, even of this morning, of one of the challenges that they're doing. You know, and it's that whole thing of you look after your own, and even when you leave the military, you tend to still be in touch with and support a lot of veterans, don't you? But I can imagine it was tough being forced to make that decision when, as you said, you joined at 19 and didn't look back. So, you know, we'll touch on some of the physical challenges, but in terms of that in itself, psychologically, how did you come to terms with that at the time?
It took me a long time to sort of have an understanding about how I was, because when I was at Headley Courts, I was constantly trying to get myself back to being the person who I was, you know, and as do a lot of soldiers when they're down there, and then, you know, you're realistically chasing an endless goal that you're never going to get to, because no matter what your injuries are, if you've lost your legs or you've been shot or you're a triple amputee, you're never going to be that same person. You need to sort of adapt to the person who you are, and then, you know, that's only when you get the sort of like the sort of like post-injury growth out yourself, you know, so you can move forward, if that makes sense, and you become a stronger person.
Yeah, it does make sense. And it's actually, I mean, that really resonates. And I think many people listening to this potentially could resonate with them, where, and it can even be, you know, it could be a really big trauma, if you like, a big T trauma, or it could be a small T trauma, like you're injured. Yeah, my 12-year-old son has just broken his arm for the second time in 2 months, and he had an operation while we were away on holiday, and he can't play rugby for the start of the season, which is devastating to him right now. But the reality is, as we all know, he'll be fine, and it's just a broken limb. But at that time, it's you know, he needs to accept it, and I think that's the same, you know, with everybody. And sometimes you can, I know me personally, even now, I'll think, well, I want to get back to being able to run this time, being able, and actually when you accept, I'm never going to be able to do that again. That was something I did at a point in my life, which I can be proud of. But moving forward, this is what I can look at doing and achieving based on who I am now. And it sounds as though that's the message that you're sort of sharing from your experience, and that's sort of helped you move forward. Yeah,
I mean, it's like, I mean, basically, it's just like that cup there. You know, there's a million ways you can pick it up. It's just a case about how you sort of like approach it, and, you know, that's with being a problem in your life, or, you know, anything really. It's just about sort of like, you know, stepping outside the box, like you get taught in the army, to look at it from a different angle, and then finding the best route for yourself. You know, so
yeah, it's exactly that, isn't it? It's finding a route. There's always a way. It's just which way, and there doesn't have to be one way, and it's finding the one that works for you. So can we go back then to, obviously, traumatic event, and you were CASEVAC'd out of the situation in Afghanistan. I take it brought back from theatre, woke up in Birmingham, now at Selly Oak, and we know that's where a lot of our soldiers were treated during the different wars, do we say, and operations. Could you give us a bit of an insight into those first few months and years for you physically, having gone from being this really strong soldier mentally and physically to being, you know, effectively incapacitated?
Well, the sort of like the first I knew about it was, I knew by that point when I got put into the helicopter to get CASEVAC to Camp Bastion that I'd been injured, but I didn't really know the extent of it. And then when I got took into the operating theatre in Camp Bastion, that I was pumped with that many drugs, I didn't really know what was going on. I can remember one voice saying to me, "Mark, where's it hurt?" And it was just hurting everywhere, the nerve pain. At that point, they'd put me into an induced coma, and then I flew out that night to Selly Oak, and I was straight away. I was put into the high dependency ward, so I was in there for about 6 weeks. You know, at that point, still didn't realise what was going on. Woke up. It was a bit of a blur, really. I was waking up. I was having hallucinations where I'd physically see my rifle in my bed, and I was having, you know, panic attacks, because everywhere you go when you're on tour, you've got your rifle with you, you know. And I was like, even though I couldn't move, I was stripping my rifle down because it was that dirty in my bed, in my head. And I was like, I got into a panic attack because I lost something off my rifle, even though it wasn't there. And then I was drifting out of, you know, like, you know, being asleep and being hallucinating, really. So that was the 6 weeks I was in there. And then when my wife and my ex-wife and my mother-in-law came in, I had a fan in my room, and it was oscillating, and every time it spun round, just with the fan of the wind come off the fan, it was hurting my skin because of the nerve pain. So that's turned the fan off. And then I got moved from the high dependency unit to go up to the Golden Jubilee spinal unit in Middlesbrough. So it was pretty much like my extraction from Afghanistan. I had 6 soldiers carrying me onto the hospital into the helicopter. So this time it was replaced by nurses carrying me into the hospital. Took into my own room, and then it was a big sort of learning curve for the hospital there, really, because I was the first soldier from Afghan that had been injured. So the first 2 days, the bins were just getting dropped down. So the metal bang was dropping me straight back to the incident, being pinned against the wall, and then that to like basically cushion all the bins on the ward. And then that's when, you know, in that week, the consultants came in and gave me the diagnosis that I wouldn't be able to walk again with the extent of my injuries, because my C5, C6 was shattered completely, and the majority of my spinal cord was taken. And my ex-wife, who's a paramedic, said if it was an inch closer to the left or the right, I would have been able to just lift my arms up. So I was really fortunate, you know, at that point. You know, I didn't mean I couldn't move, you know, at that time. And then it was just a case of, so that was me paralysed for about 8 months in hospital, neck down.
And Mark, sorry to interrupt, but when you received that news, how did that feel?
I think from a soldier's point of view, it was soul destroying, because literally 6 weeks ago I was around fighting from country, and now I was literally stuck in a hospital bed, you know. And it was just like, I think, to be honest, if someone had literally, I would have asked someone to come and finish the job off, really, because it was just at that point I just thought, you know, I told my wife to go away. I didn't want to see her make a new life for herself, because I didn't want to be a sort of a hindrance, really, because it was my choice to be a soldier, it wasn't hers. And then it was within that week I received some more bad news that my 2 friends had been killed in Afghanistan. So it was really hard week, really. And I was sort of like, within that week, you could say I took a week off for myself, just to get myself and think about myself. And it was within that week I literally just did turned such a negative look, the way the doctors have said that I was going to be for the rest of my life. And then I thought, right, you know, I set my little plan out to get myself back on my feet. And and I just sort of come sort of relentless in my recovery, my rehab, you know. And then it just sort of like kept moving on from there, really. So yeah.
So what would you say were the biggest challenges that you faced then, in terms of getting back on your feet? What did that sort of look like, so our listeners can understand the sort of journey you went on?
So, I mean, the biggest thing for me was to get back on my feet, was just sort of like, you know, I had these two consultants who were really educated guys telling me that I was never going to walk again. And I thought, well, you know, I can either take what they're going to say to me, or, you know, I can make my own way, you know, make my own way in the snow as such. And that's where I put this little sort of like acronym together, sort of to get myself back on my feet. So, you know, first of all, I needed to have belief in myself, what I was capable of doing. And then having the integrity of like knowing that I was going to prove these people wrong. And then it was a case of like, you know, setting out my objectives of what I was going to do. And, you know, a lot of people put things off, but for me, it was doing it now. It was like, if I'd done something, once I'd done it, I was moving on to the next thing. And then it was basically about having the imagination about where I wanted to see myself. So before I was injured, I used to go run up Skiddaw when I was, before I was injured. So I used to literally stick my iPod, get my iPod put on for me, and then just literally just imagine myself walking, you know, be Skiddaw or being out walking on the street with my dog. And then it was a case of, you know, about setting myself some challenges. And then obviously the challenges for me at that point was getting myself back on my feet. So my challenges was my rehab, my physiotherapy was the main important goal, my hydrotherapy, you know, and then basically, you know, always like keeping on pushing myself. And that's what sort of got me on my feet really, and sort of motivated within my rehabilitation.
I mean, Mark, my next question was going to be about the three things that had the biggest impact on ensuring a positive outcome. And I feel like you've answered the first one, or even maybe the major one, which is around your mindset. And I really do subscribe to the power of the mind. I think as a society and a culture, we are starting to recognize that our mental health and what we think and believe has a direct impact on our physical health and actually what we achieve. You know, I do believe that 90% of our lives is the narrative we create in our head and what we achieve. And therefore, if we believe we're going to do something, we're much more likely to do it. And if we believe we're not, then, you know, and it sounds as though you used, you know, you would have heard these terms before, but that whole visualization, manifestation, you didn't know you were doing that at the time. That was, you just found that strength within yourself to go, I just need to take myself to that space. So, I mean, would you agree with that? And what would you say were the other elements that really, you know, ensured that you got to where you need to be?
I think a lot of it was just about believing in myself, you know, and that was just literally, you know, I mean, because if you believe in yourself, you know, I mean, it's like a lot of people believe in, you know, who are religious, they believe in God, you know, but for me, I'm my own God, and I make my own way in life as such, and so does everyone else. It's just about how they want to push themselves and just get to where they want to be in life as such.
Master your own destiny.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Is there anything else? I mean, you mentioned physio around you, no doubt friends, family, your sort of former colleagues, soldiers. Would you say there is anything else alongside your mindset and all of the team around you that ensured the positive progress?
I think a lot of it as well was like when I eventually did get down to helicourts, was being around like-minded people. That, you know, if some people were feeling down about themselves, it got back to the same black sense of humour that give you the ask what you needed, you know, and it's just a case of like, you know, and that's it really, because, you know, I mean, with the extent of injuries down at helicourt, it was just a case of like, you know, there were some horrific injuries, but, you know, and I think a lot of the soldiers that are down there, they don't see it as a horrific injury. They just see it as a challenge. And that's why some of the guys from helicourt have gone on to doing amazing things, you know, like in the Paralympics, you know, and it's just a case of like, it's just about the power of the mind, and it's just, yeah, you build your own future. It's just how you want to build it, really.
Yeah, and it's that fighting spirit, isn't it? I mean, the fact that, you know, they're soldiers says a lot about the sort of person that they are anyway, in terms of continually chasing the next challenge and looking forward. But still, when that's taken away from you, that can be difficult to still remain in that space. But as you say, for many, even with support, they're able to do that. So I really want to hear so much more about, you know, the next chapter, or the chapter that you started to build for yourself. But before we do that, there's a couple of other questions, and then, as is tradition on Coffee and Comebacks, love to hear a few sort of softer facts about you. So before we go on to that, do you have a headline lesson in terms of a message to pass on to people listening, in terms of just a, you know, if it's one nugget that can help somebody listening today?
I'm trying to think. I think I suppose the lesson that I've learned is just learn to sort of like love who you are, really, and then, you know, it's, if you can love who you are, then you're going to be a lot more kinder to yourself. And then, you know, I mean, because a lot of people are too hard on themselves, so don't be too hard on yourself, you know, and don't literally punish yourself because you've not achieved your goals for the day, because tomorrow's always another day. It's just a case of like, you can do that other task tomorrow at a higher standard, you know, if that makes sense. And because I do think, I do believe that a lot of people are hard on themselves, and they just need to breathe. Yeah. And, you know, that makes sense.
I mean, it's sound advice to anybody, isn't it? I think we could all say, look at ourselves and say there are times that we all could take that advice on board, but it is so true. And I think that whole inner self-critic, and if you're, you know, that sort of driven person to achieve, that just amplifies that critique, because you're so used to achieving, you know, whether that's physically. I mean, that's a big currency in the military, isn't it? You know, physical fitness is one of the big currencies. If you're not fit in the military, you know, that means not only you're not going to be able to necessarily perform your job, but you don't have the respect of the people around you. So once you lose that, you're losing a big part of your currency. Final question for this part of the section. What do you think is different about you now?
I think I'm more a lot more driven and a lot more focused now. It's took me sort of like a long time to get like this. Mostly with injury and getting sort of like learn who I was. It's sort of like give me the time to understand that I'm more driven and more focused in what I want. So I know what I want to do, and it's a case of like, for me, it's all about other people, and I'm very sort of like altruistic. You know, for me, I'm not in it for my own gain. It's all about other people, and I think that's probably the best quality I've got, really, is because I'm not out for myself. It's other people. It always has been, really. So, and that's sort of like, I think in a way, being injured, it's amplified my qualities to help other people. So, yeah.
And it goes back to what we said at the start, doesn't it? That you were just determined after that week that you had with yourself to make it a positive impact. And it's amazing to hear that that's the space you're in. So we're going to have a quick coffee break. Love this part of our conversations, because we get to find a little bit more of an insight into your sort of interests outside of, you know, whether it's professional or, you know, the day job, if you like. So I find a lot of people find this question tricky. Probably the hardest question I'm going to ask you. What's your all-time favourite film, and why?
I think it must be The Warrior. I think about the MMA fighting, about the two brothers. you know, I can watch that. You know, it's just like, yeah, it's just about, yeah, it's just, I think it's about everyone sort of like coming together. You know, you know, everyone goes through a lot of like turbulent times in their life, but you know, when it comes down to it, everyone just joins together and, you know, works together, you know. So yeah, it's, yeah.
I always get more films to add to my list when I ask this question. So I've not seen that, so that's definitely got to go on the watch list.
Yeah.
And I also tend to get lots of book recommendations, as do our listeners. So what's the last book you read or listened to, or your favourite, whichever you prefer?
It is, I think it's a 10x audiobook with that James Cardine. I think it's the 10x. I think it's the 10x rule, an audiobook. So I usually listen to that in the car. So it's always come off that feeling a bit, you know, hyper as such. You know, he's a bit of a I think he's an American like multi-millionaire, but it sort of like with what he's sort of saying to you about stuff is about always keep driving yourself and keep pushing forwards to be the best. And you know, I can see that. You know, so yeah, it's good.
Another one to add to the list. Well, I really enjoyed that, Mark. So thanks for sharing some interesting facts about yourself. But now it's time to hear a bit more about that next chapter that you built. You know, you've already shared with us that because of your injuries, you had no choice to leave the military. And you've done a number of things since then. And I know you've got some really exciting things planned as well. And as you say, it's all about other people. I mean, that is what is, you know, so humbling about what you do. You're really focused on helping others. So could you share with our listeners what your journey has been like in terms of where you've taken your career and the work that you have done and that you do?
Well, since leaving the army, and you know, I'm in a very fortunate position to do what I do, and I'm very grateful to be in that position. But that's what gives me the time to sort of help other people and give back to the people that really need it. Really, you know. I mean, it's like the soldiers' charity that converted my house, you know, so they spent like $100 grand on my house to sort of like, you know, get it converted and everything. So I think it was literally within a year, maybe 2 years of being told I'd never walk again. I managed to walk up Skiddaw with about 30 people from the Wicton Fire Service, you know, and there was the Colonel there, Phil Naylor, you know, and we walked up there, and, you know, we got to the top, and it was like, you know, again, that reinforces like what I'm trying to say about doing things now. You know, I got up there and everyone was just sat down there, and it was like a ging gang girly with the cubs. Everyone was there and they packed lunches out, and I just literally got my sandwich out for me and my dog and had a quick slurp of my coffee and then just packed it away and walked back down and left them. I thought, I didn't come here for a picnic. I just thought, come up to do what I need to do and get back down. You know,
Such a soldier's mentality.
Yeah, so I did that, and then I've done quite a few abseils from with the soldiers charity through down the Pepsi Max. That was 205 30 foot. Yeah, 235 foot, I think it was, off the Pepsi Max. And then I've done skydives with the soldiers charity, and then
and that's all to raise funds for the charities. That their challenges to raise funds and awareness. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I'm a national ambassador for the charity, and you know, I've gave talks for them. You know, at Barclays, where, you know, one night they raised about 12 grand. You know, so it's just, I'm just so grateful for what work they do, because you know, the pot that they've got, it needs filled up, you know, and that's why I like doing what I do, fundraising, to help, because all that pot will eventually go back into another soldier's house or help them to get stuff that they need. And then that was when they've also, soldier charities like sponsored me to go to Rome when I was in the Great Britain team. So I was competing over there, where I came fourth in Europe. you know, so it's because like the Soldiers charity is, it's an amazing charity, and it really is. And then I kept sort of like doing my own things as well, sort of like for local charities. So that's when lockdown kicked off, and there was I noticed there was so much like sort of like negativity on Facebook about, you know, I can't do this, can't do that, and thought, well, you know, it's just a case. At that point, I took my kiting machine in the back garden, and I thought, right, after working out the figures and everything, and I formed a charity up down in London, and then they transferred me over to Phil. I said, want to do a challenge, so I've like run the distance of the Atlantic Ocean. And he says, well, you started to plan it. I said, well, I started about 6 o'clock this morning. So, you know, I say, yeah. So for about 16 hours a day, for 88 days, I was in my back garden, be it sunshine, rain, and I was just rowing. And that was for the Soldiers Charity in the NHS. And then competed that, and then it was it's about probably 6 weeks after that, I decided to do one for the local charity in Carlisle, the Youth Zone. So it's for kids that's been it's gone through hardship, and you know, they're in difficult positions. So I did from Carlisle to Calais on my kiting machine, but the kiting machine sort of like broke when I did about the last 60 miles to do. So I had to do the last 60 miles on a ski erg. So so that was
adapt and overcome.
Yeah, just used to what was there really. And then also did a charity sort of fundraiser for Wings for Life for spinal cord research, where it's called the enduro row, where basically you just row for 4 hours. So I just decided to do it in the ski erg really. Everyone else was there in the rowing machine, and you know, there was like some of the GB athletes were on there. They were struggling to do like 3, maybe even 2 hours. You know, I was just there plodding on in the ski erg, and then I think we raised about 29 grand for that. And then done the Cheshire Ring for the Soldiers charity. That was 97 miles. And with one of my friends who was injured the day before I got shot. Rick Clements, he lost his limbs up to his hips. So we did that in 3 days. And then I think that was 3 weeks after that, I did the coast to coast. So that was, we did back to front. So we started from Robin Hood's Bay and went to St. Bees. So we're basically walking home really. So we did that in like 6 days, 9 hours. And that was 193 miles. So we're doing about 30 miles a day. And then it was a case of, at that point, it was, things sort of started picking up. I was starting to get, you know, I was going to the Cumbrian Challenge, I think it was, for Walking for the Wounded. It was the first, I always wanted to do it really, just to say I'd done, you know, the Cumbrian Challenge. So I did it, and then someone was struggling on the hill, and I come up to her and I says, what's going on? So I can't do it. And, you know, I'm sat there and I says, right, what's your excuse? I says, I've got 8% power in my leg, in my right leg, and I've got 10% power in the other one. And I says, so what's your problem? You know, and she was like, she just looked at us and went, right, come on, get your ass. And then so just stay with me, because I'm not walking fast. And then got it all the way around, and then ended up getting like the Kevin Uglu Award for the Spirit of Cumbria, for sort of like picking her up and taking her around really. And then I was sort of nominated for the Pride of Britain as well, where I didn't really think I was justified into getting it really, God, being nominated really, because I don't really like sort of like being recognised for stuff I do. I just like to keep my head down and just crack on. And I was ever so grateful to get nominated for it. And then I was up against so many other people who'd done so many amazing things. And then I got told to go down to the castle. I had to go down with one of the councillors. I was helping arrange this VJ day. And I was sort of ambushed by Border TV. I'd won the Pride of Britain for Border. And I was one of the 17 finalists out of 150,000 people. So I went down to London for that, and that was, I just really couldn't grasp it.
Blown away.
So yeah, you know, and I've had there was an envelope on my kitchen table for, well, I'm really bad at opening my mail, so there was like this A4 envelope, and I thought I'll just open that another day, and then there was another one came, and I thought, God, what was this? And then opened it up. It was a certificate of the Duke of Kent. I'd been got a royal commendation of him for all the work that I'd done through lockdown.
I don't get one of those in my mail. I'm just as bad as you as opening it. But
that was like, so I was just like, yeah.
That's amazing.
So yeah, I got bollocked off one of my mates because they opened my cupboard and they were all in there. They went, mate, you need to get these out, and I was like, oh, just put them in there behind you. So, so I've had to get them out and put them short now. So, yeah. So it's a lot of these challenges are just sort of to, for me, is to inspire people like myself, sat in a hospital bed, or people at home that are struggling really, because if they can see what I've done and they know my story in a way, that they can think, well, if he can do it, anyone can do it really, and that's what it's all about, you know. And you know, it's just even if people are struggling, you know, then I've had people get in touch with me, and you know, and I've just chatted to them. I've met them for a coffee in Carlisle and just tried to help, because I think I've got a lot of empathy and understanding about how it is, and it's just a case of, you know, for me, it's giving that hand to someone and helping them, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, and it must give you a lot of fulfillment as well, going back to that positive impact, because it, you know, it really, yeah, will build you up, won't it, when you see others around you gaining from something that could have, you know, set you back, but actually it's taken you forward. And I mean, so many challenges in there. What led you then to set up Project Believe out of obviously doing a lot of fundraising, national ambassador for ABF? What then sort of took you to a space to set up Project Believe, and what does it do?
Well, Project Belief, it's just about bringing everyone together, bringing everyone together, you know, and get everyone working together really, breaking down the barriers for people. You know, it doesn't matter what sort of like community you're from, or you know what your sexuality is, or you know, or what gender you are. It's just like, you know, I mean, we're all under the same roof, and it's just about getting on with everyone, you know, and just, you know, trying to make either your community or, you know, your home life a better place for you, or, you know, people around you, really. And it's, for me, it's just about helping, you know, there's four amazing charities I'm trying to help, you know. I mean, there's one, obviously, the Soldiers Charity, that, you know, they do so much work for soldiers and the families, and then there's Walking for the Wounded. You know, the two amazing national charities that I've managed to get working together, because a lot of the other charities are sort of like trying to sort of like work in their own way, which is, I think, if they all sort of like work together, they'd have a bigger platform, and you know, then they could divvy the pot up really. And then the other two charities are local charities. One's CFM Cash for Kids. So it's run by a lady called Sarah Oldham. She provides Christmas presents for be it single parents that are struggling at Christmas, and make sure that no kid goes without a Christmas present. And then the other charity, it's a hostel that it's run by one of my friends called Steve Petit. So what they do is they provide a service for people that's come off the rails, be it if they've gone to prison, or you know, they've just literally derailed themselves in life. And then they've got a package that they put together, and then they sort of get them back on track, you know, and just give them a gentle push down the track and support them. So I mean, we're trying to raise. The foundation's trying to raise 500 for the Soldiers Charity, as well as Walking for the Wounded. And then CFM Cash for Kids is trying to raise 1,000 for them, 100,000, sorry. And then Calderwood House is, we're trying to raise 150 for them, because then they can have a full refurb of their hostel, because it's not been refurbed for the last 7 or 8 years. So if you imagine how many people has gone through that hostel, you know, so they can have a better sort of like amenities for the staff as well as the residents, you know. So yeah, and then there's a little girl called Isabel. She's got neuroblastoma, so she's got type 4 cancer. So we're trying to raise like £1 million for her. Now it's just a case of like, if she doesn't need all that money, then that can go to the neuroblastoma trust, where they need, I think they need about 400,000 a year to do the research to cure childhood cancer. So they're the sort of like main sort of like figures that we're looking for, really. But these are all going to be sort of like used, well, through sort of like, with these figures, we're trying to raise through the different events. So we've got a skydive on the 18th of September in Floodborough, which there's about 7 of us doing that. And then we're also doing the Jarrow marches, so walk from Jarrow all the way down to London. So what I'm trying to do with that is, you know, it's unfortunate all these guys from the Second World War and the First World War are passing away. But it's now we're starting to start thinking about the guys from the Falklands Islands, you know, and other conflicts that are literally sort of like, in a way, need sort of like brought up to the forefront as well. So hopefully what we're trying to do is, as we walk through the different towns as on the way down, we're hoping to build a big sort of like crowd of us, really, or if there's a platoon of us or a company of us, you know, ends up being just sort of like to highlight what we need to do, and then joining on with the older guys when we get down to London. So that's going to be on the 4th of November. So, and then we hopefully getting down to London by the 13th for remembrance. And then in the plan at the moment, I'm going to be doing a challenge next year. It's going to probably take about a year, maybe a year and a half, where I'll be completing all of the Munros in Scotland. So Munros are mountains over 3,000 feet. In Scotland alone, there's 282.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a guy that's just completed at the moment called Nick Gardner, who was, I think he's 82, Nick is. And he did it for his wife. She's got dementia. So, and he completed them in over 2 years. So, well, what I would like to do is complete the ones in England as well, the mountains over 3,000 feet. So I think there's another 15 in England and Wales. Sort of like looking for people or companies that really want to sort of jump on board and get the names on the kit to help us raise the funds that we need for these amazing charities, really, because without these charities, there's so many families that literally, you know, will be struggling, you know, be it the single parents with the kids for Christmas, or the families, you know, at home, you know, the soldiers' families, because the families are the backbone of the soldiers that provide the backbone for them to go away and fight these wars that we're in. You know, and it's just a case of like, yeah, so that's hopefully for next year and onwards, really. So it's just about breaking boundaries and just bringing everyone together and just, you know, making a nice place to live.
Making a difference and an impact. And it's, yeah, I mean, it is amazing, and I wish you obviously the best of luck with those challenges. We'll be able to follow them, and in fact we'll include the links so anybody listening can have a look at, as you say, the supporting, getting involved or understanding what you're up to. Yeah. But I mean, obviously you've achieved so much already, and you've got lots to look forward to in terms of the fundraising and the events and the difference that you're making. But could you maybe share with us, as part of the sort of, I guess, parting thoughts in terms of your greatest achievement? So if you look back on what you've done so far, what would you say is your greatest achievement to date?
I think the greatest achievement is proving the console strong and learning to walk again. But it's just not learning to walk, it's learning to write again, learning to, you know, drive a car again. All the the little things that, you know, you look at when you see people in a coffee shop walking about, doing the normal things that you don't even take into consideration. Being able to do them, and then for other people that are in the same position that I was, to see me doing that makes me the richest person in the world, really. For me, it's just it's about other people. Always is and always will be, you know, until I'm, you know, pushing the daisies up. It's just about other people, you know, and just helping and giving back.
Honestly, humbling. I wish we could talk for longer. I know there'll be loads of people listening to this that will probably want to reach out to you or find out more, but thanks so much for your time, Mark. We wish you all of the best with the challenges, with the fundraising, and look forward to seeing how you progress.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.